All right, brothers. You know, as TNG episodes go, there are several of them that are intensely character specific. See, last time we looked at family, which, while it does have a whole lot of character building moments, it's actually like several different characters, not specific to just one. Brothers, though, it's all about data. Like, almost everything in the entire episode is uh, about data and Soong and lore. And okay, in terms of acting, what's impressive is that Brent Spiner actually plays three different characters in this, and it doesn't come off as badly acted. He actually does some. He's a very good actor and did a excellent job playing three different characters simultaneously. But the gist of this one, though, is Data as an android is having android issues for android reasons. This is the episode that introduces the emotion chip, which is supposed to upgrade Data to be able to feel normal human emotions. Why exactly Data has a problem with that and holodeck holo programs don't? I don't know. Then again, it's possible that holodeck holo programs are considered to have a feeble sort of imitation of emotions and not like the real thing or something. M- but Data doesn't have that either, so I don't. Feels like an intentional design decision in the on the part of Soong, and not something that's just a fundamental limitation of having a positronic brain. Which is only really relevant if your players in your TTRPG are actually going to go the route of being Soong type androids, which yeah, Data and lore aren't. Well, okay, most players won't be. I mean, Data and lore are sorry, but most players aren't going to be Soong type androids. And again, like I said in several other episodes related to data and androids, it's like there's so many different kinds of androids in Star Trek that you don't really need to use Soong type androids. Why the TV producers got obsessed with them, I'm not sure, because of the fact that they kind of sort of forgot about just how many other kinds of androids they already had in this setting. Even in TNG, Data isn't the only kind of android. Oh yeah, that's a funny plot development. Anyway, though, so moving on. Uh, this episode they have a side plot where some of the kids on the ship are playing practical jokes on each other, but accidentally hurt each other. And as you can see, they're not particularly old. This look like the right age to be kidnapped by the Aldeans in the When the Bow Breaks episode. And this one, though, because of random stupidity, eats a fruit that causes him to be infected by parasites that will kill him if he doesn't get emergency medical treatment. Hmm. Which is an interesting thing because that's the time when Soong's plan gets triggered. Soong starts to remote control Data in order to force Data to return to the planet, or, well, come to the planet where Soong is currently hiding out. Because the planet Soong is currently hiding out isn't even in Federation space. Dun dun dun. Yeah, after the destruction of the Omicron Theta colony, Noonien Soong and his wife Juliana resettled on Terlina 3. Now, one thing that they establish with this particular one is that Noonien Soong was expecting the research lab he had on the other planet to get attacked. So he had an escape plan for a contingency, but his escape plan only really worked on two people. So they get out and zoom. Juliana, however, doesn't exactly survive. She ends up buried on Terlina, I think. But eventually, in a later episode, they reveal that the android duplicate of Juliana is actually doing stuff uh, away from Terlina and had somehow managed to infiltrate Federation society without having people realize she was an android. Don't ask me how that happened. I don't know. Okay, seriously, even if you watch the episode, that's one of my main thoughts on that episode is how does an android pretend to be human in Federation society where passive sensors will be like, oh wait, this isn't a human. I mean, you can go with the idea that there's some sort of super tech chameleon circuit is involved so that it mimics human bioscience so that people doing passive tricorder scannings won't immediately detect it or something. But um, that's not guaranteed to work. That's a good explanation of why she didn't get found out immediately, but not an explanation of how she managed to keep that up for years until Data um, uh, figured it out. And Data figured it out because of the fact that her ability to play the piano was inhumanly mechanical, and thus she couldn't possibly be human because of the fact that her piano playing did not was she didn't imitate a perfect performance. She imitated a performance that was slightly imperfect, and thus people didn't think that her piano playing was superhumanly good immediately. But if you see two of her performances, all of her performances were exactly the same. Anyways, getting a little sidetracked. This particular one was the origin story of how the Juliana android came to be. Although they don't really say a whole lot about that in this episode, they kind of sort of hint at it, but they don't really outright tell you. Now, the emotion chip thing is interesting because the fact that that's one thing that Juliana does do that Data and Lore at this time were unable to do. Data Juliana actually emotionally reacted to everything exactly the same way that a human would. Why exactly that is, I'm not sure. But again, this is the episode where Soong gives Data and Lore the emotion chip so that one or both of them can upgrade themselves to be able to feel emotions the same way that Juliana does. Again, though, it's one of those things that's a kind of like, why did this plot in? Yeah, I don't know. In TNG, they established that Data is an unfeeling, emotionless machine, and thus not exactly the same as a normal human being, and decided to use that as one of the methods by which to distinguish Data from humans. And it's a major plot point in this episode, and it's something that is what makes Soong type androids different from a lot of the other kinds of androids, like the great old ones androids and the XO3 stuff. It's just like they just like automatically had it. And like I mentioned earlier, side if you want to have a player that's a synthetic life form, you can do something that's the equivalent of taking a hollow program, like the Doctor, and having the hollow program live in a mechanical body. Because, as is established in here, the only thing about Data that's actually unusual technology and not something that Federation scientists can just mass produce already is the positronic brain. The Data's actual physical mechanical body is easy to replicate. Anyway, though, so the side plot with Jake Potts is kind of short. It's one of those things that's in there so that they have something that the crew is doing before Soong takes over Data in order to remote control him. Now, the remote control function is one of those things that's interesting because the fact they don't really establish how it works, just that it does, because Soong is apparently remote controlling Data from a distance of several light years. Yeah, that's an interesting twist. Anyway, though, so going back to the Potts brothers, the Cove Palm was the plot device here. Its fruit would contain parasites that were infectious and life-threatening when eaten, so that the kid who was infected had to be quarantined to keep him from infecting others. Uh, okay, yeah. Also, was the kid who ate this thing trying to kill himself? Because Jake was doing this thing where he faked his own death. The practical joke was his brother faked his death. Yeah, I don't know. That's the sort of thing you could throw in as a minor plot point if you want to, but I'm not sure it's a good idea because it's just a random nonsense side story, and you can make up whatever you want to. Anyways, though, oh yeah, the perimeter field charge thing. This is something that's an interesting thing because of the fact that it's something that Data use as a way to block off certain hallways in the ship. And this isn't the same as a security force field. That's the part about this that I personally find to be kind of interesting is that it's not quite as obvious. Like, oh, there's a force field here. Perimeter field charge, apparently it injures you if you get too close to it. Anyway, though, minor plot points. Like, there's several different ways you can impede access to areas inside a spaceship. Perimeter field charge is, of course, one of them. So, Data, while being controlled by Soong, uh, flies the ship over to the planet Terlina 3 that Soong is currently living on. Because Soong, well, he doesn't want to leave home. And actually, this is an interesting point. That they do actually establish in this episode that Soong does have some sort of a income via black markets trading deals. Because Soong has tech that people are willing to buy if they're, if they have the coin, et cetera, et cetera. And that's actually how he's been funding his stuff is doing black market arms deal types things. Anyway, though, that is actually an interesting plot point that you could use as the method by which someone like this is found, is that you track down the source of a smuggling operation in, it's like, oh, this is technology that's not normally available in the black market. Where did you get it? From this old guy on that planet that's not officially claimed by anyone. Hmm. It is actually an interesting plot point, though, is that there's a lot of planets in or near Federation space that aren't actually inhabited. In places like this, you're like, why didn't people inhabit that one? Yeah, that's a thing that's often overlooked in in the setting, and that a lot of these planets that aren't formally controlled by anyone do in fact have pirate raiding bases on them, and minor colonies from minor powers that aren't the Federation. But the control of the planet might be so sparse that you have one or two people living there in their house, and that's about it. Soong, if someone had been on the other side of of the planet from where he built his house, he wouldn't have been able to find them. Anyway, though, this is one of the this is, I think, the only episode where we actually have Lore and Soong interacting in person. Because like there's several episodes where Lore talks about Soong. We see Soong in flashbacks related to Lore, but because this is the fact that this is the only episode where we actually see Soong like in person alive, to my understanding. Because this is the first episode where we see Soong in person alive, and it's also the one where he dies. Anyway, though, so if you were going to have a copy of this and like a different, cybernetics person who made artificial life forms, you could go with that sort of thing. It's like, oh, hey, here's the guy. Oh, wait, either you need to save him immediately or he's going to die. Hmm. Anyway, oh yeah. Also, this episode was the origin of people calling the crystalline entity a snowflake. Yeah, in universe, Soong refers to it as a giant snowflake, that he was running away from a giant snowflake. And that, that's actually kind of amusing to me. And then, like I mentioned earlier, he had a escape plan, and presumably Soong has an escape plan for his current location. It's just that Lore mortally wounds him before he's able to use the escape plan. Overall, though, this episode, there's not really a huge amount of stuff you want to deal with here because of just how heavily focused it is on Soong, data, and lore. There's like a few bits and pieces you can get with stuff like rogue colonies that aren't on the map. Because that's a plot point that comes up in Star Trek a lot. It's like planets that are officially uninhabited yet have a colony of some sort on them that the episode of the week takes place on, despite the fact that it's supposed to be uninhabited and so forth, which is some pretty good stuff, honestly. The plot with this one, there's a lot of aspects of the plot here that don't really matter, even in the episode as it aired. And just like things you could replace with, your players doing random nonsense. Because let's face it, that's going to happen anyways. Mm, and that was, well, one of the things that's interesting here, though, is that Lore is so thoroughly evil that he'd rather be the only Soong type android in existence because of he thinks that Soong type androids are better than humans. And thus, kill off every other Soong type android and be like this immortal demigod sort of being ruling a galactic empire. Which in a later episode, Lore does attempt to create with a bunch of liberated Borg as his ground troops. That goes about as well as you would expect it to go, but yeah. Mm, that was a pretty major episode because if I remember, because that's also the episode that we get the Borg Type 3 ship from. Anyways, though, one thing that's interesting here is that Soong is like, "Oh no, I'm dying. Don't bother taking me to your medical thing." Well, see, actually, one of the things about this is that Soong had come to the conclusion that he was going to die soon, and that was actually the reason he summoned Lore and Data here, is because of the fact that he wanted to talk to them one last time before he died. And again, he seems to be somewhat unaware of just how evil Lore is. That could be um optimism on his part, or it could just be that he just hasn't seen it or something. I don't know. The episode makes it feel like it's supposed to be optimism, but Data's read on Lore being evil is rooted in the fact that Data tried to or had to stop Lore from killing off the entire crew of the Enterprise D with the assistance of the crystalline entity. Yeah, that's a thing. Why exactly Lore was so dead set on killing everyone? Well, in part because he didn't want to be taken in for committing crimes against sentient life, because Data realized that Lore was the reason why the colony's defenses failed against the crystalline entity. Because, spoiler, standard Federation shielding technology is actually capable of blocking the life draining effect that the crystalline entity's beams have. And thus, the whole thing with Lore was the reason why uh, the colony was destroyed. It's like the shields on the colony failed because of what Lore did. And that's otherwise Omicron Theta would have at least had a, you know, bunker that some of the people would have lived in, even if the majority of the planet had gotten wiped out. This actually brings up a bit of a logical inconsistency, though, is that how did Lore get deactivated and left in storage if um, Soong is the only person left? Hmm. I suppose that it's basically the idea that they're going with is that Soong was using the whole like override thing to shut down Lore, which, you know, that's a possibility. That is actually a valid logic for how Soong managed to take out Lore. However, if you use that logic, then you have to question how it is that Soong doesn't understand that Lore is the reason everyone on the colony is dead. Again, a bit of a writing conundrum. The logic behind it, I don't understand. However, if you're going to actually use something like this, make up your own logic. Try to keep it internally consistent, but, you know, quandaries happen. Anyway, I think it's about done here. The basic ideas of this episode are things you could borrow from. I wouldn't personally use Soong or Soong type androids, but If you were to, shall we say, file off the serial numbers and just rename stuff, there's a whole lot of fun you could have with this. Besides, the whole plot point of having an android crew member run off to the planet where its creator is hiding, that could actually just be a NPC. You don't need to have one of the players take on the role of Data. You could have an NPC do the role of Data, and all of the players, Riker, Geordi, Worf, etc. And that's about all I could think of to say about this one. It's one of those deep lore building episodes that, because of the fact that it's character specific, you would have issues actually using. But due to the fact that it's conceptually generic, even though it's tied to a specific character, you could use the concept separately from the rest of the story. Alrighty then. Well, I'll call it here for now. See you guys next time.